Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about some of these things that are being done to food to turn it from something that could be healthful to poison.
Okay, let's take something easy. Let's take juice. So, fruit is good, right? Juice is fruit, right? Wrong. That's exactly the problem. And this is an easy one. All right, so why is fruit good and juice bad? What's the difference between the two?
Fiber.
Answer: the fiber. The fiber is the good part of the fruit. The juice is actually the bad part of the fruit. The juice is nature's way of getting you to eat your fiber. Now, why is fiber important? After all, for decades now, we've been taking the fiber and throwing it in the garbage, or we've been smoothieing it so that the fiber ends up being chopped up into little pieces. It basically gets destroyed. It gets macerated so severely, it basically is not there. Now, to understand this, you have to understand the science of fiber, and you have to understand the science of absorption. So let's go there. There's not one fiber. There's two. One's called soluble. The other one's called insoluble. So soluble fiber is like pectins or inulin. It's like what holds jelly together. Insoluble is like cellulose, the stringy stuff in celery, or chitins, like the outside of a soft-shell crab. All right? So they're all fiber, but they're obviously very different. Turns out whole fruit has both, has soluble and insoluble, and you need both. So why do you need both? Why does it matter at all? Because when you consume the fruit, the insoluble fiber, the cellulose, will act like a fishnet, will act like a lattice work, and it will take up residence on the inside of the intestine, especially the duodenum, right after the stomach. And then the soluble fiber, they're globular. They will plug the holes in that fishnet. And together, with the correct geometry, they will form an impenetrable secondary barrier that will inhibit absorption of glucose, fructose, sucrose, simple starches, certain fats, so that they do not get absorbed early on in the intestine. Therefore, they don't go via the portal vein directly to the liver, overwhelming the liver and causing the liver to become insulin resistant and generate liver fat, which is at the heart of virtually all the chronic diseases that we know of today. The goal is protect the liver. Well, fiber protects the liver because it sets up this gel. Give you another example. You have a spaghetti colander, metal bowl with holes. You run the water. Water runs right through. Okay, now take a blob of petroleum jelly. Throw it into the center of the colander. Now run the water. Still runs right through. Bounces off the jelly. Now take your finger and rub it all the way around the inside of the colander. Now run the water. Water does not run right through. Now you've got a barrier. So, imagine the insoluble fibers, the colander, the soluble fibers, the petroleum jelly, and the geometry of the two together was what your finger did. And now you've turned what basically was a sieve into a barrier. Well, that's what's happening in your intestine when you eat real food. But when you stick it in the smoothie machine, what you've done is the blades of the Vitamix or the Breville or the Magic Bullet or whatever you're using will have sheared that insoluble fiber to smithereens, and so it will not be functional. The molecules will still be there, but the dynamic function of those molecules has now been basically destroyed. All right? So, again, it's what we do to the food that matters. So that's an easy example. But there are many, many other examples. There's, for instance, frying potatoes in oil. Okay, the oil's fine, the potatoes are fine, but Once they're fried, they're not fine. Okay, now they're full of acrylamide. Okay, and acrylamide causes, is a known driver of cancer formation. Okay, an example. All right, how about grilling on the grill? All right, those aryl hydrocarbons are known to cause cancer as well and stimulate enzymes in the liver that ultimately lead to insulin resistance. So it's not necessarily just the food industry that is doing damage to the food. You can do damage to the food at home too if you don't know what you're doing. The bottom line is there's danger in the processing. And whether the food industry does it or you do it, you have to be aware of it in order to be able to live healthfully.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
It's poison. And it actually detracts from metabolic health. And we have the data to show how and why. Because fructose